It's time for Talking Pictures Trivia. A quick friendly reminder, Charlton Heston is barely in the second Planet of the Apes movie.
Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia, the podcast in which a group of geographically challenged friends explore movies through trivia as an excuse to keep their friendships alive. I'm one of these friends and today's host, Nick, and with me is...
Tom.
And KJ.
Great to have you back as always. Additionally, joining us as a guest for this episode is...
Tyler.
Thanks for joining us today, Tyler. Tyler hosts the Three Films and a podcast, which takes three movies and compares them over the course of a few episodes. Tom will be joining Three Films and a Podcast to talk about Close Encounters, airing on Tuesday, June 8th. Tyler conveniently likes movies. For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with a movie quiz, as these pivotal questions will determine who earns today's trivia crown. The first round of questions will be worth 1 point each, and the second round of questions will be worth 2 points each. Then, once the fierce competition is over, we follow it up with our famous movie rant where anything goes. KJ, tell us about today's movie.
Today we are going back to 1977. The Atari Video Computer System, later renamed the 2600, is released alongside Combat and Indy 500. Elvis dies, and the Coneheads debut on Saturday Night Live. During all this, George Lucas releases his first Star Wars film. But today we are talking about a Stephen Spielberg movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In theaters with Close Encounters of the Third Kind includes George Burns' Oh God, Disney's Pete's Dragon, and Saturday Night Fever. Tom will be quizzing us today. Tom, what is Close Encounters of the Third Kind all about?
So Close Encounters looks at Indiana, and there's a man there played by Richard Dreyfuss. His name is Roy Neary, and he has not exactly a close encounter of the third kind, but he encounters extraterrestrials in a spacecraft, as does a nearby woman played by Melinda Dillon, and her character's Julianne. And the people who encounter the spacecraft in their day-to-day life, they become obsessed with it. And as the movie progresses forward, Roy becomes absorbed with finding whatever this thing is. And he starts kind of sculpting this image in his head. And we see Melinda Dillon's character drawing it. And it's ultimately revealed that the aliens are coming to Wyoming. And it's a Devil's Tower, right? That's the name of the location. They're going to land at Devil's Tower. And so those two decide that they're going to throw everything aside and find these extraterrestrials. KJ, if you had one word to describe Close Encounters, what would it be?
Bum, ba, bum.
Is that one word? I got that in
I don't
three.
speak Close Encounters.
Yeah, right? Who knows how many words that is?
That's true. Could be 3 syllables. Yeah.
Nick?
Auditory. Tyler?
Quintessential.
And my word would be mystical.
It's time for Question 1.
What is the occupation of Bob Balaban's character, David Lawton?
Locked in.
Who? Not Richard Dreyfuss.
No, it's the guy who is with Francois Truffaut.
Okay,
Phoebe's father.
got it. Locked in.
I'm going to say locked in.
Wait, hold on. Are we talking about Bob Balaban's character?
Mhm.
He was the one that was with Francis Truffaut the whole time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm off to a great start. Well, I'm locked in with what the answer I had was, so I'll run.
All right,
with it.
man. Hopefully I got it right. All right. So Tyler, you're up first. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Nick is up first because he locked in last.
I'm blanking on who Bob Balaban is. But
He's
there
the
was
guy.
a
So I'll help you out. He was the guy.
No,
who
I still have an answer.
Oh, okay. Go
But
for
tell
it.
me.
I was going to say he was the guy who was translating French.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
I was assuming there was
Oh.
a guy in the desert who said what his, or not desert, but in Mexico, said what he actually was, not a translator. And I was assuming that was Bob Balaban because I didn't know who Bob Balaban was.
Mhm.
He is a cartographer.
All right, KJ, you're up next.
So before I answer, I gotta say, so Audience, we've discussed this before in a very similar format, but not on this show. It was another show that never aired. And I, I'm going to get confused with the conversation we had then and the conversation we had now. So excuse me if it sounds like I'm repeating myself, because I am. He was a cartographer. Yes, that's my answer. But when he's first on the screen, I thought it was Richard Dreyfuss. So I was so confused for I don't know how long. Why is he in the desert sometimes? Why is he back in Wyoming sometimes, flipping back and forth? Can he speak French? I was a little confused, but
It's
Audience,
okay. I was
he
gonna
also
say,
has a
KJ,
beard.
I thought he was Steven Spielberg.
This is going wonderfully.
Think about it. Put the beard on him. You can see he had glasses. Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
could have been Spielberg-esque, trying to get in his own movie, you know?
This is hilarious to me because in a similar fashion, I had Bob Balaban and Richard Dreyfuss switched. So the answer I locked in was for Richard Dreyfuss's character, who is a linesman. And that's the whole movie up and like, even still right now, I'm like, this is a Berenstain Bears moment for me because I'm like, I kept thinking the whole time, I'm like, why is Richard Dreyfuss top billing? He's barely in this movie. but I just had it wrong. And so that's somewhat embarrassing, but also hilarious. I'll take the L, even though I did know it when it comes down to it. But obviously I didn't know it well enough. But
All right. Yeah, fair enough. He is a cartographer. Yep. And so I want to talk about this idea of kind of journey, right? There's this motif of journey that's going on here. It's both a motif and it actually is literally happening in this. And the fact that the first character we meet, who is kind of introducing us to this extraterrestrial world, this other plane of, we could call it existence, or other plane of acknowledgement. He is a map maker, right? Or a map reader, he's somebody who translates maps into languages we can understand. And I was wondering what people thought of this idea of the journey that these characters interact with.
So I'll start by saying Steven Spielberg is a master of his craft, right? We're doing Close Encounters, and it's a movie that I honestly hope I never see again. I don't like it that much, but when I'm watching it, you can't help but watch it. And part of it is because of how Steven Spielberg lays everything out, which includes the cartographer going to the desert, seeing the planes, creating the intrigue, and then the cartographer loses not his skill, but his purpose, right? He immediately is upset that now he's translating French to English. Is it?
Yeah.
French and English.
It's not German. Yeah.
No. Well, because at one point they do like an I Love Lucy, like that guy talks.
Oh,
that guy
it's
talks
Spanish.
To that guy.
Yeah. That's right.
But I love how Steven Spielberg is letting the audience know, like, you're going to see something extraterrestrial. The map is going to be important. It's what you're trying to bring up here, Tom. It's being shown to the audience right away through his character, and it's wonderfully done. It really gets you right into it.
yeah, it's interesting to have someone who is a map maker and is supposed to be the one that charts unknown territory, right? And it gets to a point where what we're trying to chart and what we're trying to I guess create a map for is like so beyond our understanding and our scope. It's interesting to see such well-played plans, such well-laid plans, and such professionals who are absolute masters of their crafts. At the end of this, it's all for nothing because they're completely out of their element. And I like how we have the foundation of all these people who are supposed to know what they're doing and supposed to be the ones that, like, we are the ones that we're going to communicate with these people. We're going to figure out the way that, what these tones mean and what this all means. And then in the end, we're just kind of like, I don't know. I think it's an interesting, I never thought about it in that way until you mentioned the journey. And I think that's interesting.
The most literal journey in this film is that of Roy Neary. He goes from somebody who clearly isn't happy with his place in life. I mean, he's not winning any Father of the Year awards. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, there's some rough parenting in this movie.
Yeah, he's looking for any reason to get out there. It just happened to be ET, I think. But anyway, and he's not a professional map maker by any means, but he is a hobbyist modeler, I guess is the term.
Mhm.
And his map comes through his vision. He gets obsessed with creating that tower, that structure, and he doesn't know what it is. But it's funny how that's the way his vision of where his destination was going to be came to him. So I thought that part of the literal journey of visualizing it versus actually going out and following this map, which really is just a model, brings us to the fruition of actually the encounter. So his is quite literally the biggest journey in this film.
Yeah, it's physical, and it's also it's endowed, right? It's a kind of knowledge that's given to him, and it's, you know, it reminds me of like St. Paul on the road to Damascus. He's on this journey, and he's knocked down and set on, you know, another journey. He's given this kind of knowledge that suddenly hits him, and then he has to go forth on this new adventure.
So I want to bring this up before we get too far into this, because this actually happened the last time we did this. What versions did everybody watch?
Good point.
Good, yeah.
I watched the I think it's like the extended director's cut or something.
Oh, you're in trouble.
So was there an ending where you saw the inside of the spaceship?
No. Like where they go,
That's
where we
good.
go
That's
inside of the spaceship?
And you go inside the spaceship and you see what it looks like inside the spaceship.
No, I did not see any of that.
Okay, so you saw the director's cut
Yes.
or the director's cut? There's three cuts.
I could find out real quick.
So there's three versions. There's the original version. There's a special edition which goes into the spaceship at the end, and then there's the director's cut, which I think is what all you guys watched. And the biggest difference between the original and the director's cut is I think they establish in the original that Richard Dreyfuss is an okay dad, and he's good at his job. He actually gets a mini promotion in one of the scenes that's not in the other one. That's not in the director's cut. In the original, right before he makes the mashed potato mold, he actually has dinner with the family, and like you see how they would have functioned before he starts losing it. So I know, Nick, you had just said he's not winning Father of the Award, but I think the different versions lean a little bit differently.
Yeah, definitely the version I had, there was no glimmer of him being happy with his suburban lifestyle, I'll say.
Yeah. Same. I did not get that vibe at all. And I watched the director's cut. So
Yeah, I did too. I don't know if I'd say he's a bad father or anything like that. It's just it's a life that doesn't kind of possess him, right? It's a life he sort of fell into. And even if he is a good father, and I really would say that with the director's cut, like the evidence might not be there one way or another. It's still there's still no passion in that life, right? And I think that's the difference between being kind of possessed to find this thing, to kind of ascend to this thing, and and kind of living, your day-to-day existence. I don't think it's necessarily.
I think it's more
he's
disinterested, Tom. I wasn't saying
bad
he's
dad, even if he doesn't want to help his kids with fractions or something like that.
I have a different read. Yeah. I don't
I
think
don't,
that's
I
what
don't
was
know
suited
if he's
for him.
disinterested
That's all I'm
either.
saying.
I think
He
it's
was
just a
looking for way
different
out and he
type
found it.
of life. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I think
it's
he was definitely bored. I think, at the beginning that we get the sense that he seems to be a passionate person and someone who can become absorbed in his work. And we see that we get the idea that he's been ignoring his family on the weekends in order to build this model train set, because he seems to be an obsessive type that once he locks in, and then he gets fed this vision of this crazy mountain or whatever it is, and that becomes his new possession. So the only thing we see of him is trying to deal with his obsessions versus his responsibilities. And so I'm with you, Nick. I don't get the vibe that he's the most attentive father, but I think really what's happening is we're just only seeing him in in his fits of passion, I guess you could say.
It's time for question 2.
What option does Richard Dreyfuss's character, Roy Leary, give to his children for their night out?
Locked in.
Locked in.
I don't remember this at all. Is this the scene where he's grabbing everybody and get in the car, get in the car, get in the car?
No, this is a little before that. He gives them an option also between two things. You could do this or that. That's options.
Well, I already locked in, but I didn't have two things.
Oh, okay. That'll be interesting to see what you say.
I can support it too.
Cool.
Locked in, I guess.
All right. What is it, buddy?
So Richard Dreyfuss gives his kids the two options of doing fractions or, playing with the model train. I have no idea.
All right. That's what you want to do with your night out. Fractions or model train. Nick, what do you have?
Okay. What I think you were going for was the wife says, you promised us last weekend that you'd take us to the movies this weekend. And the kids wanted to play some kind of, I think it's like miniature golf, but he didn't give them an option. He said, we're going to Pinocchio. I grew up on Pinocchio. You're young kids. We're going to Pinocchio.
Okay. Tyler, what do you have?
I agree and disagree with Nick. I remember him giving both options, and yeah, he said we can either go to Pinocchio or we can play a round of mini golf with a bunch of people and standing in lines and a lot of pushing and shoving. And so he's trying to coerce them into picking Pinocchio because he loves it from his childhood. But yeah, I can't remember. It was some sort of mini golf, galaxy golf or something they called it.
Goofy golf.
Goofy
Galaxy
golf.
Goofy golf.
Oh,
yeah, Nick coming through.
All right. And the points are going to Nick and Tyler. And he does. I'm giving Nick the point. Also, the goofy thing was a good catch. But he does give them the option, and he kind of does his sarcastic Richard Dreyfuss thing.
I took it as not really an option, but yeah.
But they all shout goofy golf. Yeah.
So that's only in the director's cut.
Oh,
interesting.
Really? What happens in the other ones?
So it looks like in the original, they're all kind of playing with the train, which also was I was kind of confused when you guys were saying he's obsessed with the train. I'm like, no, they were all in the room. They were all hanging out together when he was doing that. And then
you saw a different movie.
I think this is a Blade Runner situation. But yeah, no, it just fades to black or whatever. It doesn't.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's fair enough. We're kind of coloring this, and bring the alternative picture of the family. We talked a little bit about this. I brought this question up because I did want to talk about the kind of the baseline from where Dreyfuss's character starts to where he goes. We talked a little bit about this. Let's talk about his relationship with his wife, played by, I already forgot her, Terry Carr, Phoebe's mom. So we have Phoebe's mom and dad in this movie. And I like one of the scenes I found interesting. I don't know, KJ, if this is in the cut you saw.
KJ, I have a hint. Watch the copy the guy who's doing the questions watching.
Yeah, that's
I should have told you. Yeah. But the scene that I found especially interesting was when he's in the bathroom, when he's kind of a breakdown and he locks himself in the bathroom. And she just refuses to hug him. And, I was wondering what people thought of that scene, because that is a really interesting scene. I don't think I've seen another kind of interpersonal relationship in a Spielberg movie that has that's that difficult in terms of sympathy. I was wondering what people thought of that.
I was surprised to see a lot of this stuff in this movie. My experience with Spielberg is a lot more, he likes to deal with the sort of 19 whatever's nuclear family dynamic, like with E.T. and whatnot. But I was surprised to see the level of, drama and animosity, or the level of just the amount of it that there was in this movie, as far as like the family infighting and all that sort of stuff. And I just got the sense that, this guy is taking out, I don't know if he, thinks of his job as a dead end job, or he thinks of his position in life as boring or too normal or ordinary, but it seems that he's taking that out on her, and she's just sort of at her wit's end. And he is seeing something that she literally hasn't seen and can't comprehend. And she takes it as like, he seems to be losing his mind, and she has no sympathy for it, because I think she just thinks it's some new obsession of his and he's shirking his duties. And that was a tough scene. I forget that they were the same scene where she won't hug him afterwards.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, if I were her, I wouldn't have either, because he looked crazy, and I'm sure she was scared, she's terrified. It's a terrifying situation to be in.
It's a very awkward scene too, even just to watch. So you're like, what?
Yeah, it's interesting because she has no real sympathy for him. And like you're saying, he's kind of shirking his duty. Like he is this, he has this role to perform, and he's lost his job now quite quickly, it seems. And there's something that's happening.
Hang on. So this scene's not in the original. I just want to point out. But what do you mean he lost his job?
He loses his job in the director's cut.
I got to look and see if that happened in this.
Yeah. So in the director's cut, he gets fired. Terry Garr's character gets a phone call saying that he's, they don't want to talk to him, and he's done. He's been fired from his job. And then in this scene, which is also not in the original theatrical release, he locks himself in the bathroom and is sitting in the shower with the water on him,
fully clothed.
And fully clothed. And she kind of knocks on the door, and she eventually gets in the door, and he kind of tells her, "I don't know what's happening to me." And he comes out and he asks, he just like, "Can you hold me? Can you hold me?" And she's like, no. And she refuses. And it's a very uncomfortable scene.
Sounds
because it's
awful.
Yeah, he's kind of, I don't know, crushed under the weight of this knowledge, and she just doesn't get it. And she doesn't want anything to do with it. But it's probably one of the biggest differences from what I could tell between
I'm
the two
surprised that
editions.
it's not in the original edition, because that was a big scene for me personally. That really sort of revealed the level or the extent to which he was willing to go to find, like, he's chasing the dragon here, right? Like, he's seen the aliens, he's been literally touched by them through the sunburn they give him. And so he's sitting there under scalding hot water. He's got an orange light bulb in the out that light, what's the socket, the light socket, so that it has the same color that the aliens had shown on him. And so, I mean, this poor guy is just trying everything he can to relive this moment or find some peace in it, or make any sense of it. And I'm surprised that wasn't in the actual cut, because that was a big moment for me personally.
Yeah, I imagine it's just too difficult, right? I know you think he doesn't come off well. I don't think she comes off well.
I don't think most people in this movie come off very well, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of tough, like I said, a lot of tough parenting, a lot of tough. There's some things that happen in here that seems like would only happen in the 70s, maybe. I don't know, like different times.
Yeah. There is there's this idea of leaving things behind that's going on in this movie. Melinda Dillon's character maybe is a little different because she's looking for her son, but she's still possessed with the same knowledge. She's still driven towards this ascent to find these things. And part of it too is she also wants to find her child. So it's maybe her incentive is a little more recognizable, we could say, but there's still this kind of great passion towards a type of understanding that isn't rational or can be articulated. And we're watching that kind of both from the outside and from the inside. And thinks what's so great about how Spielberg does that last scene is that we understand kind of the wonder. Right? It's hard to describe. We don't really know what the aliens want. We're never told, or have that kind of experience of what they're doing. But it's people who have or are, and namely Roy, ascending a sort of a sort of rational empirical understanding of their circumstance into a revealed knowledge, right? And and I think that that scene, that kind of where he's in scalding hot water, and like you're saying, trying to relive that, right? Trying to relive Sinai, so to speak. um that kind of just shows how uh almost how like terrifying or even unfair that kind of endowment might
Yeah,
be. It seems like something like, yeah, I would want to be touched by an alien. I would want to be touched by God,
sure.
right? Like event. What happens to the saints? So all the saints, they, a lot of them die and die quite brutally. This doesn't happen to Roy. He eventually transcends, but presumably so do the saints, right? Eventually, that part of their life, that fleshy part of their life, dies. It gets stripped away, and that kind of happens to this guy here. At the end of round one, we have Nick with 2 points, Tyler with 1 point, and KJ with 1 point. Hi, Tom here. I'm just recording a quick ad for Mike's Gasoline and Repair. Mike just wanted to let all our listeners know that his gas station and shop and restaurant and bar, and all those things are open now, right down on Route 54. He's got it going. And if you go up to the gasoline bar, it's a really unique experience. You can get gasoline right there. You can sit down. It's outside with a few friends. They have these frosted mugs that they put the gasoline right into, so you could swig back a nice pint of really cool gasoline. Mike is now selling at the bar super unleaded. So this is for a limited time only. Is super unleaded gasoline now with nitro. So it's not carbonated like normal gasoline, but this is nitrogen bubbles in it in order to make the taste like a little smoother. It goes down really nicely. It's like a Guinness, but it's gasoline. So if you really ever wanted to have a gasoline flavored Guinness, come down to Mike's on Route 54, and you'll have some of that, and you will drink it, and there you go. That also right now, you could get one with Mike's moderately sized sausage sandwich. It's not too small. It's not too big. It's really a good size. People think that bigger is better, and it's not really. Bigger is not always better. What you want is a good sized sausage sandwich with a gasoline that kind of tastes like Guinness. So come down to Mike's Gasoline and Repair for those lovely treats.
And we're back. Tyler, we're at the pivotal point of our episode where we ask the guest a key question. If you could watch this movie with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
It's a really good question, and it's the question I've been most afraid of this entire time, because it would I've become very accustomed over the past few years to watching everything by myself, whether it's in the theater or my newest preferred method of watching a movie is on my laptop with headphones, kind of in my own little zone there. And so when I think of this question, I'm like, well, really, I don't want to watch it with anyone. I've just become sort of secluded in that way. But I talk about it on my pod all the time, and Thomas and I have talked about this a little bit. My grandfather was a great source of inspiration for my taste in movies, and he introduced me to a lot of stuff that really shaped the way I look at stuff and shaped my sense of humor and all that. So if I have to pick someone, I'll pick my grandpa. And I actually just visited my grandparents last week, and I watched a movie with him, and it was kind of perfect because he's got hearing aids now and they just connect straight to the TV. so we can't
Nice.
talk to each other. So
Yeah.
I can turn up the TV as loud as I want. He can have it as loud as he wants in his ears, and we can both watch and then discuss. And so that was just about perfect for me. And not to sound too antisocial, I'll watch movies with anyone, but typically it's by myself. So I'll go with Grandpa.
Of course, we have to ask, what movie did you guys watch?
So we watched Captain Fantastic. He watches a lot of movies.
Wow.
And so we were cruising through Netflix, and he has seen just about everything. He's had a Netflix subscription since it started, getting the DVDs for as long as I can remember. And so we came upon that one. I was like, oh, that's filmed. A lot of that was in Portland, and he doesn't know, he hasn't been up to Portland too often, and so he's like, yeah, let's check it out. And so we watched Captain Fantastic. I thought it was just Captain Okay.
Is that the one with Aragorn living out in the woods with his kids?
Yeah. It was a cool movie. It was fun, but I didn't. Towards the end, it fell apart for me. But that's a whole different podcast.
You know what scene was startling in that? When they're, so the movie is that he's out in the woods raising his kids, and he's doing a fantastic job, right? These kids are the best of the best, and they come back into civilization, so to say, and they go to like a DMV or something, or maybe somebody breaks their arm. I forget exactly, but they're in the waiting room, and other people are around, and they look like you and me, and the kids are like, what's wrong with all these people, right? Because they don't look like they could survive in the woods, and they can't run a mile or anything like that. And they're like, why would anybody want to be like that? And you just kind of look down, and you're like, oh yeah, what am I doing? Like,
they just show everyone in the waiting room just all fat. They look a lot like me. It was very personally, I was very hurt.
Oh, you thought it was Captain Fantastic until that scene is what you're telling me, right?
I was too attacked. It hit me too personally. I couldn't be on board anymore.
Tyler, do you know if your grandfather's seen Close Encounters?
I would be surprised if he hadn't. But I should have asked him.
Any thoughts on what he would think about it?
I think he would enjoy it. I think he's got good taste. In fact, I've recommended some stuff to him that he did not like, and he didn't tell me. He would never tell me, but he told my grandmother, who told my mother, who then told me. And so
the whole chain.
Yeah, I've my whole life I've called him Bompa. He's been my Bompa, and so I'll get like, Bompa did not like that movie.
It's time for question 3.
Where is the famous musical motif first heard?
Locked in.
Locked in.
Locked in.
All right, KJ, you are going first.
All right, so this is a great time to bring up the Blu-ray menu. I don't know if you guys had the actual Blu-ray, but the Blu-ray menu is great. It looks like that board towards the end of the movie, and they're kind of cutting in different things, but they're playing the song the whole time. I left it on the whole day while I was working, just the Blu-ray menu over and over and over again. So if you have the Blu-ray, that's the first time you'll hear it. But in the movie, this is an audio-only podcast, so I don't think we can answer this question.
Okay, KJ is pointing up. So apparently the song was first heard in the direction up. Why not? Whatever. Tyler, I think you...
Well, I think I know where he's going with this, because I thought it was the first time I remember hearing it was when they sing it in the desert in India, and they ask, where did you hear it? And everyone points up. So
is that what you meant?
Yeah,
KJ?
that's where they said, right? The first time it was heard by humans was the sky.
The first time we hear it is through their
Okay,
voices.
Oh,
yeah.
that's true.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's-
The first time we hear it. So my answer was India.
Okay, very good. I'm going to give points to everybody. Points to all. All right. And yeah, that was Dharamsala in northern India. And it's kind of recounted as this chant. They record everybody chanting it. What a gorgeous scene
Yeah,
that is,
it's
too.
really cool.
It's you see everybody who is in I think they're in yellow, right? And they're out in this field, and they're singing the the famous chord progression, and all of the French and Americans are walking in between them, and they're all in white, and they're kind of coming up the mountain, and then it has this like great bit of humor that KJ you're referencing, where they say, "Where did you hear it?" and everybody points up, and the camera is at a level where you can only see their hand gesturing up to the sky, which is this like lovely little joke that's put in there.
And again, Spielberg, master of his craft, he sets up the joke. It takes a while, right? Where did you hear this? Oh, come with me. And it takes them a while to walk all the way up that big hill so he can ask the question so they can all point up, right? It's that slow progression towards that answer that really punches that punchline.
That was a great scene, and that's one of the reasons my word was auditory, because the famous parts of this film for me were the sensory stimulation. You know, that's really what got me. That scene, and of course at the end, but really this is where it begins. And it's not just the noise that we hear from space. It's also the chanting and the celebration of the people that are experiencing it. This is an amazing scene. And I actually had the volume up pretty loud when I heard this scene, and it blew me away.
Yeah, I think I had a similar experience with this scene in that it really jumps out at me. And I think the reason for me was, speaking about sound design specifically, there's a lot of noise in this movie. Like there's a lot of conversations that we're hearing, two conversations simultaneously, or there's a TV very loud in the background, or there's a kid murdering their doll on their crib loudly in the background. There's just always some sort of noise happening, and it's sort of this like constant white noise. And then we get to this scene, and it's just the tones, the alien tones that they're chanting jump out so specifically, and they cut through that noise so pointedly that it's jarring, it's shocking, and it is beautiful, and it really feels like you feel like you're transcending to some degree, because for me it was like we're escaping all of this other noise, and now we're hearing this one sort of familiar but also foreign sound, and what does it mean, and why do they all know it, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's a cool moment for sure.
Yeah, it has the feeling of a religious ceremony, right? It has that kind of the sense that you're there. It's lovely, and it's it also, you really feel Vilmos Zsigmond, I think was the name of the cinematographer. It was also Altman's cinematographer for movies such as McCabe and Mrs. Miller. So that kind of single shot movement thing that he does a lot in the end of McCabe and Mrs. Miller is here, which we're going to do that movie. That movie's great. That's one of my favorites. Have you guys done that or seen that?
I've never seen it. No.
Oh, that's a
Put
great
it on
movie.
the list.
But anyway, yeah, bring me on for that. I'll go on and on. Yeah. But I also brought this up just because to introduce kind of the aliens and the role they have in this movie. Obviously, they're the thing that prompts, the conflict and whatnot, but how they are depicted in people's lives, and then maybe more broadly how Spielberg works with aliens in his movies throughout his career.
The thing that I think about when I think of Spielberg and aliens, because before I saw this movie, so the first time I saw this movie was last night. That was my first time ever seeing this one. So, and I always, in my mind, knew it as a very scary movie, and it's tense. It has some very tense moments, but I thought of it as more of like a horror film, and I thought like bad things were going to happen, and so I was very on edge for most of it. And then when we get to the end, and that's not the case, things turn out more or less okay. Yeah, some people were gone for a while, but they're fine, they're back, they'll assimilate, we hope. And then our boy, not Bob Balaban, hops on, and he's gonna go for his adventure. But I just kept thinking, I was like, man, Spielberg loves these aliens. Like he treats them, he really loved, like, I just get the sense that he truly cares about them. And it's the same with E.T., like he really treats them with great care and with great wonder, and he doesn't vilify them, even though he shows the discomfort around them from a human perspective. We don't understand them, and we don't know what they're going to do to us and what they want from us. But I just get the sense that he loves aliens. He must have been obsessed with them as a kid, and he just wants to take care of them. And I don't know. I get a feeling of love from him with regards to his alien creatures.
Yeah. It's like a feeling of wonder.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to a threat. And it's I think a little different from ET. It's the alien is humanized in ET,
Right.
right? So it's more like us. It's kind of like a smart dog,
Yeah.
right? ET is in this. We do see them at the end a little bit, and we see that one. I guess we could call him the adult alien. Standing up and all that type of thing. But they're this. They're almost like a lovely sensation, like something that stands in for a place where you could put your affections, right? And you could put your wonder. They're almost like filmmaking itself. What film can do for you? There's that kind of metatextual observation, I guess I'm putting in there, or what God is for a lot of people, right? That kind of experience of the divine, and which is probably a lot like an experience of great art, where it's not where when you really enjoy great art, or really when you really have this affective experience of like a divine figure, be it Christ or one of the saints or whatnot. It's never really describable in terms that you normally use to describe things, right? It's sort of always beyond words, and the great movies are always beyond words, and the great experiences are always beyond words. And Spielberg, in his kind of, I don't think he's yet 30 when he made this movie. I think he
I'm
was
not
like
sure.
29, 28. Yeah, something like that. So he's like this little prodigy who's able to get that feeling, of what it must be to have to be shocked by great experience into, I think, that last scene.
So pulling that thread a little bit, and I think I have a good punchline here. So what other Spielberg movies have aliens in them? Right. So
War
Close
of the World.
Encounters, E.T., War of the Worlds, they're kind of threatening. They're not.
Yeah, War of the World, he
transcendental.
kind of changed. He also did, I think, 1984. Does that have aliens in it? And then, of course, part 4 of Indiana Jones.
Part
right?
5. Is it
part 4?
I don't
Part
count
4,
that
part
movie.
4,
That
yeah.
movie doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Do we
Yeah, I haven't
No,
seen it.
there's a trilogy of Indiana
does he
Jones.
have that same
That's it.
love and affection? Is that
No.
Are those aliens Christ-like to us?
No,
Is that,
I don't think so. And I think in like War of the Worlds, he even said that until that point, he only wanted
Actually,
to have
KJ,
sympathetic
if I can
aliens.
answer you
I don't-
seriously though, they actually were somewhat founders of humanity. They were treated like gods. They were treated like
That's
gods.
true. They were religious.
If we have to,
Yeah,
if you
no,
really
I-
make me analyze
is
the
true.
crystal skull, and I'm sorry, Tyler, if we're spoiling this
No,
for
it's
you
true.
a little bit here, but they did have that. They did have that going on.
I thought about this a lot yesterday, the difference how he treats his aliens in War of the Worlds versus how he does in ET and Close Encounters, and I completely forgot my point. And it was a good point too, fellas. So you're missing out. If I can remember, maybe I'll try and shoehorn
Fix
it
it in
back in.
post.
But because I did think about that. Because it is different. But I got the sense from War of the Worlds, like, gosh, it's been a long time since I saw it, but it seemed to be more of a human issue in War of the Worlds than it was the aliens, if I remember right. But I mean, I could be speaking completely out of turn because I don't really remember.
He's a father who's divorced, and it seems like he's a pretty crappy father, right? Like he's
Only
not
in the
going to
director's
But we have to realize
Spielberg.
that this was at a different point in Spielberg's career as well. We're talking about 2005 compared to what, 77? I mean, there was a lot of, it's just at a different point. So I think a lot of our thoughts when we're looking more at ET or things around Close Encounters are a little bit more similar.
Yeah, I still think I'd say ET is also a different treatment. I think these are 3 different treatments of aliens. One is like the friendly companion, because the enemy in ET is the
but you also have to
military,
realize,
right, that which isn't the enemy
reason-
here.
and I do agree with making him more humanistic, or whatever the word was you used. Don't forget, ET is actually a juvenile, so he's trying to figure out this world just as much as everyone else. So I think that's why it takes that tone of almost a little bit more of a child's perspective.
Yeah, because
of that, he's left behind.
And we're also getting the perspective from the kids as well. So it's E.T.'s childish, and we're also, so it's really, very much, very much kids kind of engaging in the wonder, which, they can only do to a certain extent. But yeah, it is a different treatment. Here, the aliens are distant from us. There's something that Roy adores. You know, he's clearly in love with
Okay.
them. But yeah, right. Like he can't stop smiling when he finds the ship. He's like, he can't stop chasing these things. He gives up everything to find them, and he's overjoyed that he gets to go with them. But we barely see them.
Right.
We know nothing about these things. Even when they come out of the ship, they're kind of in shadow, right? And that kind of distancing effect elevates them above us. You know, it's the heart rising up towards something beyond itself. Well, with E.T., it's sort of the kids. It's been a while since I've seen E.T., but E.T. is somebody who's helps them kind of also maybe, I don't want to say find their own humanity, but they sort of end up taking on the responsibility of taking care of ET, right? So they end up engaging in the human world more thoroughly because, you know, they want to protect this innocent creature from these bad men. And then War of the Worlds, it's just, you know, we're going to blow up the world because aliens need resources or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fun movie, but it doesn't have that. It's not as interesting as the earlier two.
Yeah, I don't remember it very well, but
My favorite part of War of the Worlds is none of the cars work. The aliens disable them. But Tom Cruise figures out if you replace the spark plugs, you can use the car, and he's the only one.
Because it was like
out.
one EMP, right? Like,
yeah, you just replace the spark plugs. We could get all the cars back.
that's
but
why.
only Tom Cruise could.
Yeah,
leave it
well,
to Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I always do. It's not working out well for me.
It's time for question 4.
When Francois Truffaut's character Claude Lacombe asks, "What did you expect to find?" to Roy, what does Richard Dreyfuss's Roy say?
Locked in.
Oh no, am I going to lose the episode here?
Nick might lose the episode. He was so close to victory, and it's so very rare for him.
Lately, yes.
AJ might stumble into the lead, which has been his season
I don't know.
2.
Tyler might come in for the late episode steal here, but I'm locked in.
Yeah, or Tyler.
I don't remember it all, and I don't think I can blame this one on the director's cut. Locked in.
All right, KJ, what do you have?
That woman in the T-Bird from American Graffiti. I have no idea what he was looking for.
Fair enough. The woman in the T-Bird.
Do you mean
from
Susan
American Graffiti.
Sarandon? Oh, Summers.
Yes.
Susan Summers.
That's
That's
right,
Susan-
Summers.
He looked him in the eye and said Suzanne
Yes.
Summers.
So Roy from Close Encounters of the Third Kind is looking for Susan Sarandon.
Well, that was my answer. So I'll just...
All right.
Yeah.
I think, Nick, did you lock in second? I believe so.
I don't think there was an audible response. I think he just looked at him dumbfounded.
All right, Tyler, what do you have?
He said he was looking for answers or the answer. I think it was answers. That's what I remember.
Oh no!
And the points go to Tyler.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and so you win.
He was slow playing this.
Oh.
Going on here. Give me some false sense of security.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, he
My team off screen is very happy. Pulled it out.
Once he
And-
figured
and-
out who Richard Dreyfuss was.
Unstoppable.
Once we got past that little kerfuffle,
Yeah.
that
He
little
didn't say
whoopsie-doo.
anything to Lacombe.
Yeah. Something in
No,
French.
Bob
I don't know.
Balaban
Yeah.
said it.
Yeah, so
That's so
the
embarrassing.
exact quote is an answer. That's not crazy, is it?
Mm.
All right, there we go. And so I bring this up. We covered a lot about this, about the pursuit, about the idea of the journey. I'm actually kind of interested. What do you guys think Roy wants? Like, how would you articulate what this guy wants?
I think he wants out, man. I think he just wanted purpose, you know, like we've talked about it fairly at length. And, you know, I mean, look, I don't make model trains or model anything, but like he's trying to build his own worlds. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that seems to be what you would do if you were building model trains. You're interested in building these worlds that you can explore with your trains, right? And so he he's bored with his life. He's bored with his job. Well, he's fired, so he doesn't have a job. I don't think he has any sense of purpose, and I think he's found it. Whether he wanted it to be his purpose or now he's just the obsession has been implanted within him. I think when he leaves, like, I think he believes that he's found his purpose when he can go jump aboard this alien craft and do some improv jazz back and forth.
I took it as he wants something more than what he has. And that's
Sure,
why
yeah.
he was on this journey.
Yeah.
Do we think he had agency in this? On the last time we talked, or I brought up, is this a story of addiction? And you guys said, no, it's not. So we don't need to retread that ground. But he got a taste of the aliens, and then did he have a decision about whether he wanted to hunt them or not? Was this something, like you were saying, Tom, knowledge? Was this something that hit him so hard he couldn't not do this? So it's not what he wants; it's what he has to do.
I leaned in the camp of this being his personality. When he gets something on his mind, he's fixated. I think Tyler brought this up a few times during this episode. That's just how this guy ticks. You know, nothing else matters except what I'm obsessed about.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say, is it a story of addiction? Because I said that it seems like he's chasing the dragon here with the shower scene. Yeah. And yeah, I think he's just predisposed to obsession, because there's a number of people that make the journey out to Devil's Tower and they end up on the same helicopter, but they aren't willing to go to the same lengths as him in order to fulfill what he sees as his journey, right? Like, he's the only one willing to risk taking off his gas mask and climb over Devil's Tower to see what the hell is going on over there. And the only reason that his female counterpart, whose name I'm forgetting, the only reason she agrees to go with him is because she wants to find her son, in my opinion. And so I think maybe to think about it as a story of addiction is interesting, but I just think he was predisposed to obsession. And so whether his addiction was forced upon him or not, I think he just was an unfortunate guy that got the bug and couldn't kick it. And he just is also the type to explore his own path, I guess you could say.
Which does sound like addiction, right? That often has a predisposed, people who get addicted often can be predisposed to it.
Yeah.
My reading was, do you mind if I quote something? Because I think this kind of encompasses my opinion. This is from...
I demand you quote something.
You demand.
I'd prefer you didn't. I hate quotes.
Overruled.
Just give us half the quote.
I'm just a guest here. So.
Oh wait, he did
Just
win
every other word.
He did win the episode. Maybe, I don't know.
But when you come on our podcast, you leave your quotes.
Yes. This is from the Varieties of Religious Experience by William James, the Harvard psychologist, and he was, studying religious experience, how people talk about it. And that's just to let you know, that's my reading of this movie, is that it's someone who's hit by religious experience. It's kind of a version of the St. Paul on the road to Damascus story. And what I like about it, I'll get to the quote in a second, but what I like about it is...
I was like, when's the quote coming?
This is so specific.
No, I told him he couldn't.
I'm going to describe the quote.
Who said all this, Tom?
Yeah.
It was Tom.
Yeah, but yeah, and that's kind of what I like. And I found this, I was reading different books by mystics, and I actually found this from James, who's not a mystic, but he was kind of writing about those experiences. And he writes, but for religion, in its strong and fully developed manifestations, the service of the highest never is felt as a yoke. Dull submission is left far behind, and a mode of welcome, which may fill any place on the scale between cheerful serenity and enthusiastic gladness, has taken its place. It makes a tremendous emotional and practical difference to one, whether one accepts the university in the drab, discolored way of stoic resignation to necessity, or with the passionate happiness of Christian saints. And when I found that from James, I thought, oh, that's this movie, right? It's somebody who's, is maybe not aware he's in, what James is calling the drab, discolored way of stoic resignation to necessity. But, when he gets hit by that light, I think he's suddenly an enthusiast. right? That's where this idea of enthusiasm comes from. It's like filled with the spirit.
Well, from a religious term, that almost would be a zealot as well.
Yeah, a zealot has also kind of political implications, I think. Like you think of like is it Judas Barabbas who's the zealot in the Bible story, right? Because the zealot, I believe that's true. Somebody's looking that up.
It's
A zealot has-
usually I'll read actually a definition.
Mhm.
Zealot, noun, a person who is fanatical and uncompromising in pursuit of their religious, political, or other ideals. So
Mhm.
it can be used in a political context. It can be used in a religious context. And based on your
Mhm.
quote, I'm looking at more of the religious zealot, if you will.
Do you think it's zealot like the way Roy acts?
Fanatical and uncompromising. Yeah.
Yeah, based on that definition, I'd have to agree with
Okay.
Nick there
Yeah,
for sure.
when I picture a zealot, he's bringing other people with him or taking other people down to
Mhm.
enact his enthusiasm.
And by that you mean like purposely, like he's
Yeah.
purposely bringing people down because he's unconsciously bringing people
Right.
down. He destroys his family.
Yeah, no, that's a good
And
point.
he brings along the woman whose name I still can't remember.
It's Melinda Dillon's
he-
character. Yeah, I can't remember her. I just remember Melinda Dillon.
Oh.
Because
I am curious to know whether or not she would have followed him to Wyoming if her son hadn't been missing, or if she hadn't been.
Well,
no one else.
he sees her
No one
there.
that wasn't touched by
Mhm.
it. Oh, that's right. She goes without him.
Yeah,
That's right.
and then they
Right.
pair up because she's getting forced out
Yeah.
into the train. But there's a bunch of people who are there in Wyoming who have seen it, right? Because there's that one guy who actually gets up the mountain with them most of the way.
Right.
Yeah, there's like 12 people who have tried to scale it.
It's time for Movie Rant.
We were talking about the song earlier, and
Mhm.
one of my favorite things about the song is it starts with a human voice, like we said.
Mhm.
The next
Mhm.
time we hear it, I think it's on a simple instrument. I don't remember which one.
They move it from the voice recording in that kind of stadium to a digital thing.
Well, right, and then the next step is a simple computer digital version.
Mhm.
And then finally we get what was probably a technological marvel, that light board. So even that song had a progression starting very human and then ending very advanced technology. So it was another cool beat through the movie that you get to witness.
Yeah, that's
that's pretty cool.
interesting. Yeah, moves from the human voice up to the aliens. The aliens
Right,
have
up
lives,
to, ascending.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Very nice.
No, I just thought I loved that we go through this whole journey, and like I said, I was expecting like death and destruction, right? And so when it just turns into, I think I mentioned this earlier, like sort of an impromptu jazz improv back and forth,
Mhm.
like I love that they have like musical experts. Oh no, go up a fifth and now hit the minor or whatever it was, and then they sort of like had this back and forth going with the aliens. Like I thought that was super fun, and I did not expect it. So it was cool that our conflict was through music and not through bloodshed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they talk.
It's
through
true,
music.
though. It is true.
Yeah, first day of school, boys.
Has Family Guy or Nobody mixed that scene with the movie where they go down the river, the book where they
Oh, Deliverance?
Yeah,
Deliverance. Has that not
Mhm.
been? Somebody must have.
Oh, done
Get
a
to the
del-
writer's room.
Yeah,
if they
do a-
haven't, you
do a
guys just
del-
found your next piece of content.
That's it.
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
finally
we
get
do
Instagram.
yeah. You can find
Well, we
us.
always need ads.
So is that tone like does that tone exist in our pop culture now after the movie? It sounds a lot like the doorbell, like do 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 do, but like is that like I'm like, have I heard this tone before? I couldn't decide if this was the first time I've heard that progression of notes, because it sounds like a doorbell. It kind of it obviously sounds like human music,
Mhm.
which I think, like, I don't know how you would do it any otherwise. It was almost my one weird critique, is like, I wish that the notes were a little bit more alien, a little more discordant, maybe, because they seem to make too much sense to a human. Or maybe they've been studying us for a long time and they know what chord progressions we might respond to. They had these poor pilots and stuff for however many years in their ship. So
Why didn't
I
they
don't know.
just teach them English?
Right?
How does this sound? That sounds like my doorbell. Play that. They'll know it.
That's a friendly sound. Welcome in.
Yeah, I think if it's like, I think if the sound to us sounds threatening or discordant, like it sounds like a bunch of just like minor seventh chords just
Yeah.
banging away.
They'll know
then
we'll
it-
just shoot some missiles at them if they do that. So
Well, it's also just we as the moviegoers are like, don't go there. You know, he's playing dissonant chords. You know,
Yeah.
don't go over there. I think the pleasantness of the music also allows us to experience the kind of serenity these characters are feeling in trying to get to these aliens.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know. I just couldn't get over. I'm like, have I heard this before? Like, is this a thing that exists in pop culture and is referenced? Because it felt like the first time, but also very familiar, which I guess is probably by design. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah, I don't
many
know.
things that are referenced, but I don't think specifically those chords.
And it was-
even now it seemed very unique when I was watching it a few years ago. I had not heard anything like that. I've seen a lot of other references from that movie that I didn't realize were from that movie,
yeah,
but I did not get that direct tone.
I guess maybe it speaks to like its level of popularity, right? Because people think of like people with their ringtones or whatever. You hear the Empire March. You hear you might even hear like the Jurassic Park theme, or there's a lot of, I mean, especially with the John Williams theme, you hear them a lot, right? And I was just surprised that I didn't feel like I'd heard this before, even though it sounded familiar. And it didn't take hold for some reason in pop culture. I don't really know, but
Yeah, it's been a number of years, you know, since
Yeah.
this point. This movie doesn't seem to be consumed the way Star Wars is consumed.
right.
You know.
To me, when I was watching this movie, and it's why I picked this as my one word to describe it, like this was quintessential Hollywood sci-fi. Like when I think of like popcorn sci-fi or an adventure movie, like to me, this movie embodied all of those things. And in my limited scope, it's, you know, I'm sure it's obviously not the first sci-fi film, but to me, it seemed to be the genesis of a lot of the stuff that I grew up with. Right. I wrote that it was sort of like seeing a blueprint, like the blueprints for the house you've always lived in. You're like, oh, that's how it all fits together. That's where they got that. You know, it just felt like all the movies I grew up with. Like I said, you know, like it felt like Jurassic Park, and it felt like Apollo 13 at times. And there were shades of Independence Day and Indiana Jones and obviously E.T. And so that was just really fun. I was just like, okay, I can see why, you know, they might have done this in Apollo 13 or you can just see where they got a lot of influence from. And having said all that, in all honesty, I'd probably watch any of those movies before I watched this again.
Yes,
I don't think I dislike it as much as KJ seems to, but for my taste, if I was going to watch a movie like this, I probably would watch any of those other movies. And that's not to insinuate this isn't as good a movie as them. It's just that I grew up with those movies. Like this movie was old to me and sort of off my radar. In my house, specifically by Star Trek, my dad loved Star Trek. And it was overpowered by movies like The Terminator and The Predator. But I'm just glad that as I've gotten older, my tastes have expanded and my horizons have broadened, and stuff like this is finally starting to land on my radar. And it's been a real treat, and it's been the best part about starting a podcast, because not only do I get to see these movies, but then I get to come and talk about it with insightful, thoughtful people like yourselves. So again, thank you for having me. And I'm glad that this movie finally made it into my eyeballs.
I'm really glad to hear you use some of the language regarding movies that you have grown up with that make you think of things from this, etc. When I watched this for the first time a few years ago for our prior iteration of a podcast that never launched, my feeling with this is this was enjoyable but I also felt it was dated just because I had waited so long to see it, that I had too many things to compare to that I already cherished, similar to you, Tyler. So that was my challenge. I think if this came out in 77 and I saw it if I was alive, and two, if I saw it in the theater, I might have been blown away by that end sequence and the spaceship just slowly drifting off screen forever. But I had seen too many other things that had taken that to another level or a different angle. So that was my challenge. This time I watched it, it was good because those preconceptions were out of my mind and I was really focusing on what this movie truly was in its own little bubble. But I had the same challenge. I did enjoy it. KJ, I agree. I don't necessarily need to ever see it again. But that's why I just had too many other things that evolved from this sci-fi fantasy, I guess, that I would say. I don't think it's true hardcore sci-fi. But yes, that's made me think of, if I didn't use the word auditory, I didn't want to use the word dated because I thought it's had a negative connotation, but that is how I felt.
I agree. When you say it's not hardcore sci-fi, I 100% agree. And that's why I tried to qualify it as like Hollywood sci-fi, right? Because you think of like sci-fi, you think of stuff like Blade Runner or even like the Terminator, something like that. That's it seems to have maybe a little bit more weight to it, whether it's through the violence or just the thoughtful subject matter. But to me, this is like, you're going to sit down, the whole family can get something out of it. You're going to eat a bunch of popcorn. And I'm sure in 1977, it sold plenty of tickets and put plenty of butts in seats. And so to me, the other reason I picked the word quintessential is because to me, it was like quintessential Spielberg, right? I think he takes a lot of big swings here and he's like, I'm going to delve into family psychology and I'm going to delve into obsession and I'm going to delve into just wonder. And we're also going to have some aliens and some cool graphics and some cool camera angles. And so to me, it was just like, I saw Indiana Jones in the desert. I saw the whole, when they see the wrecked planes, it reminded me of when we first see the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. We're assembling our experts and they have this sense of wonder. And so to me, it was just like, the word quintessential just kept popping in my head. Like, this is Spielberg, this is Hollywood, this is like popcorn sci-fi. And to me, it seemed to be the genesis of a lot of those things.
Yeah, I find it so much more complicated. It's harder to pin down. There is, what's interesting about it compared to, let's say, the what we're calling more recognizable science fiction films. There's so much good feeling in this. An entire end sequence. I mean, even the military people who are trying to stop them are not really that dangerous, right? I mean, we even find out that they're not killing the animals; they're just knocking them out. Even the animals are not going to be treated poorly. So there's this good feeling, but there's also so much more of a sense for me in this movie of mystery, in what actually these people are looking to get to, right? Because it's never articulated. With the Terminator, we're trying to get John Connor because he's going to save the world, and we're trying to get away from the Terminator. In the Predator, we're trying to get away from the Predator, or Indiana Jones, we're trying to get the thing away from the Nazis, that type of thing. In this movie, they're trying to get to this place for really a reason that nobody knows. Like they don't even know why they're trying to get there until they get there. And that kind of that indulgence in the mystery, I find this movie to be much more recognizable, and I think this is probably obvious from my comments, as a more of a religious film than as a science fiction film. And I'd say I enjoy it a lot more than later Spielberg stuff. Like, I enjoy this movie so much more than the Indiana Jones movies. There's probably like
what?
I think there's 5 people in the world.
That's like my go-to trilogy, like growing up.
Yeah, I know. There's 5 people in the world who are not big Indiana Jones fans. 4 of them are dictators, and one of them is me. So it's it's fine. It's just the evil person club. But I think that's why I appreciate this movie. However, I see what you guys saying with like the Hollywood beats, and you realize that Spielberg is such a monster in the best sense, because his sense of filmmaking has made Hollywood, right? He is the inventor of the blockbuster.
Mhm.
And not only are those beats recognizable from this movie, but also from Jaws, right? As well, the original blockbuster. And so it is interesting to see like this movie, which was a huge risk on the part of Columbia, right? They were like going bankrupt. They had to borrow money from another producer to get this made, and they made what, $300 million or something in 1977 money. They cashed out. Jaws, which was apparently a production nightmare trying to put that thing together.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, there was like apparently it was just a nightmare making that movie. Like nothing ever worked, and and all these things. And to think of this kind of what spit and tape sort of getting things together, getting it produced, really worried, all the risk that goes into it, and it becomes these two movies become these blockbusters. They establish almost the kind of like the genre of blockbuster, which transcends movies, and it becomes marketing, right? There's,
Right.
it's a type of marketing, and so the beats that are recognizable in early Spielberg, they seem to make Hollywood. And so I agree with you guys on that one, even though I have to say I'm not the biggest Indiana Jones person. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One of my favorite Close Encounters with the Third Kind story is I work in an office that's got a bunch of cube farms, and different people have coffee machines in their cube, but there's one coffee machine is in this hallway, and whatever they do, they use a grinder, and it's always a mess. There's just coffee grinds all over the place. And one day I'm finally like, guys, it looks like Third Encounter of the Close Kind back here. What is going on? And they said, is this your third encounter? Step back, step back. You're too close. You're too close. Like it was a wonderful word mistake, and it was just one of my favorites.
And I was trying to figure out if you made a mistake or not.
That was a tricky story for me to tell.
KJ, it's
remember
technically Close
You're right.
Encounters of the
It's
Third.
like, yeah, not the third encounter. Step back, step back.
Mhm.
You're too close.
I'd like to once again congratulate our winner of the week, Tyler.
I did it.
The win at the end there.
Yeah.
Good job, man.
Nicely done. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
all
guys,
right.
Ooh.
check out our website, talkingpicturestrivia.com, for more information about us and our episodes. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel. We are extremely grateful for any positive reviews, as those help others like you find us. If you like what you hear, remember to like and subscribe to our show. What is your favorite classic sci-fi film and why? Let's continue the conversation on Twitter at Talking Studios. Have additional thoughts? Email us at talkingpicturestrivia@gmail.com or give us a call at 201-467-8679 for a chance to be featured on one of our future From the Listeners episodes. Thanks again, Tyler, for joining us today. Where can people find you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. It's nice to see Tom again, and it was nice to meet KJ and Nick for sure. You can find me personally at Bob Chillin with an underscore at the end on Twitter or Instagram. And if you're interested in our podcast at all, it's 3 Films Pod. You can find us 3filmspod.com or on Twitter, Instagram, all that sort of stuff at 3 Films Pod. You'll have your best luck on Instagram.
Yes, and listen to it. I've been on it before. I'm going to be on it again for the Close Encounters episode you guys are doing.
Yeah. Really looking forward to
Convenient.
it.
Yeah. So if
Synergy.
if you just like me, just see that, but listen to the show. It's I listen to it. It's a really great show.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And you guys do a great job as well. I love the format. I like the trivia aspect of it. It's really cool.
And you can find me on Twitter at Thomas Lehman 15. Also, check out Talking Pictures Trivia B-Side. It's a separate podcast in which we cover kind of extra topics on the movies, and we'll be doing one for Close Encounters as well.
And you can find me on Twitter at KJ10001000.
I can also be found on Twitter at The Nicknamed. Join us next time when we discuss Nick's recommendation, which is my recommendation, from 2018, A Quiet Place. Check it out before A Quiet Place 2 comes out in theaters on May 28th. Stay tuned for our first impressions of A Quiet Place. Should be a fun one. Talk to you then. Ding, 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 ding.
The first time I saw A Quiet Place, my wife and I, we went to the theater, and it was the Dolby Cinema Experience or something. You guys ever heard of this? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
right? So it's supposed to be a brighter screen. I don't know. There's like 30 speakers, like the whole ceiling is speakers, and the chairs have multiple rumblers in them so that you can feel different patterns of rumble. And we're sitting here watching this movie, and they have the rumbles going and the absolute quiet going. It was terrifying. It was awesome. It was a great way to experience this movie. But this time I watched it, I was down in my basement on a Sunday morning. Everybody else in the house was asleep, so I had it on the TV and my headphones plugged into the stereo, and I turned off all the lights, so it was pitch dark. And I was thinking, somebody's going to come down at some point, and that happened. My wife came down, so that didn't get me. That didn't get me. And at some point, I went up and I made toast, and I was very conscious of every noise the knife made when it hit the counter, the jam scraping across the bread. I don't know how those guys made it through the movie, but I came down, I was watching, and my wife came down for the last 15 minutes, and she said my eyes were just the widest she had ever seen them. And I'm like, yes, of course, it's A Quiet Place, and I immediately watched An American in Paris just to cleanse it.
Wouldn't toast be a bad choice if you're trying to say as quiet as possible?
Well,
First choice ever.
that is true, and that's probably why they don't eat it in the movie,
No.
right?
Yeah, well, I was eating fish when I watched this for the first time, so which is I think a better meal to stay away from sound-based aliens, but
What kind of fish?
I have a mixture. Well, usually salmon, but I have some cod. I eat a lot of tilapia, whiting, things like that.
Just for when you watch A Quiet Place?
That's a whole spread. And audience,
No,
if you remember,
that's not all.
Tom is anti-popcorn. He's only bread. So all this fish is on top of non-toasted, because that would be too loud, bread.
Oh no, I can't have bread anymore. No, just fish. Just lots of different fish. I had swai fillet and pink salmon that day. I had almost 4 ounces of swai and about 8.5 ounces of salmon.
What is swai? Is that like an Oscar Mayer fish or something?
It's not like a catfish. It's like a catfish replacement in some restaurants.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Not a fan of catfish, actually.
The first time I watched A Quiet Place was in the movie theaters. I was very excited about the film, and pretty much like you, when I left the theaters, I would just kind of whisper to my wife, like, "How'd you like the movie?" And just always very quiet for a long time. And they had that same effect the second time I watched it and the third time I watched it. It's a testament to the movie, how it really impacts you, how you behave after you finish watching the movie. It's great.
Unfortunately, I don't think I ever had the true movie theater experience, and I do think that would be an amazing way to view this. And in fact, I thought it was quite interesting. One of the reasons we're going into this movie is the sequel is coming out shortly. And what's interesting is, even though we're at the cusp or in the middle of COVID times, they are only releasing A Quiet Place 2 in the theater. So I have a dilemma. Will I be breaking my year-plus long hiatus from the theaters to go see A Quiet Place 2 in a theater with, of course, hopefully a reduced audience? My wife and I are fully vaccinated, so I don't know, but it's a legitimate question I have. Is that going to be my return to a theater? There is a chance we can go on a weekday. She has some time coming off, low attendance, hopefully, but we'll see.
Yeah.
That's my dilemma.
Yeah. I think when you pick a seat, it kind of like blocks out seats around you. So if you kind of don't pick your seats next to each other, but space them out like between one seat, it kind of spaced out, which is more. And then
So we'll be the only ones in the theater.
This is the COVID hack from Ragnar. Buy your tickets separately.
It sounds like drone bombing.
You sunk my quiet place.
I actually was just going to spend a ridiculous amount of money buying seats.
You can rent the theater.
AMC. That's true. You totally can.
Yeah,
I've been looking into that.
We did that over Christmas break. We went to the theater.
Mhm.
6 of us went. My wife, myself, my 2 daughters, and my folks, and we watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It was great.
Yeah, so I didn't see this movie in the theater. I saw it last week in my kitchen while making and consuming fish of various types.
Yeah.
I didn't see The Godfather in the theater. I had a Game Gear
Yeah.
with one of those antenna, and I was able to watch.
I didn't like it as much as everybody else.
No, I don't know what they're talking about. My Game Boy Advance
black
played it
and
fine,
white.
but yeah, 12 frames per second. But it was, and the
Yeah,
smell
yeah,
of fish. Ugh, it was exhausting.
Real fishy
Yeah.
movie.
It was it was pretty tasty, felt healthy, good healthy
A lot of
kind of fat.
protein.
Yeah, a lot of protein, good. Yeah, so then I moved from my kitchen to my living room and finished the movie and the fish.
I don't think you watched it in an optimal, even home experience, let alone movie experience.
Yeah,
theater experience.
I haven't plugged in my TV in like 7 months. So,
Well,
you know,
how have you been watching these movies?
on the computer, which is not a great way to do it, but also the TV's pretty old, and I don't think I have a stand, so it's gonna be
Flat on the floor. You got to stand above it, looking down.
yeah, more or less.
It's
Have
trying to
sit-
fillet these fish.
Yeah, sit Indian style on the floor and
Oh, I just assumed Tom was taking chunks out of the side of the fish here. I don't know.
Eating it like
Gollum.
Gollum, just like, yeah.
yeah.
Like he just slapped it out of a river.